Hey there, good people. It's Patricia, and I'm back. Oh my goodness. So much to share and get caught up on. There's been a little, I wouldn't even call it hiatus because it wasn't deliberate, but there's been a little break, what should we say? A little break in our regularly broadcast programming. Only because I was dealing with a family medical crisis, and then we had to go celebrate a graduation, graduate level graduation for my daughter, and there was a lot going on in the midst of all of that. And trust you me, there will be lots of content as a result. But one thing I will say that I was good about was staying in the moment. And we're going to talk about in the moment because this is really about resting in the power of a moment, or resting in powerful moments. But and even though it wasn't rest per se, but it was not trying to stay connected to all the other things, right? Because it just became too much. And in order to manage it appropriately for my energy and capacity, it meant saying, focus on this, focus on that, and everything else will be secondary, tertiary, whatever level, but it was not up here. Those two things were what were at the top of the flagpole, and anything directly related to it, such as travel and having myself be available. But being in the moment really is what helped me throughout the last few weeks. And I intend to share some more of that because it's still kind of unfolding now that things have started to regulate themselves and not be all over the place. Because, woo, there was a lot of unregulated moments. I am proud to say, however, that I stayed regulated as best can be expected, and there were no surprise, uh, you know, chronic illness issues. Fantastic. Like, that is worth celebrating all on its own, correct? So, that said, one of the things that I took note of, um, to circle back around and discuss and a little bit here is this thought that sometimes we have moments and we need to rest in those moments, rest in the power of those moments, rest in powerful moments. Like, there's nuance to that language, right? But the thing that's key is the rest part. And I want to explore that a little bit here about what that means and how I stepped into it, and how you can step into it or make yourself more aware, I guess I would say, to be reminded of that and why it matters, right? Why it matters. So as I already stated, there was lots going on, and just the situations themselves required being much more focused because in the midst of dealing with a family health uh, crisis, there's literally this whole trip being planned, not being planned, planned halfway across the country, uh, for a graduation ceremony. I mean, so you got, two extremes: health crises and major celebration. And they're like this, and we're looking at, they were looking like they were going to collide, and that was going to not be a good thing. It all worked out, I will say that. My family member is well. Things have settled down there, and they settled down literally within days of needing to um, uh, travel to California. So that all worked out. But one of the things that I noticed is trying to stay focused, like, that requires energy. And when you're trying to stay focused on uh, in crisis situations and in, high need situations, like that requires a lot of energy. It requires a lot of energy. And I say that, I know it sounds like I'm saying that as if that's a surprise. It's not a surprise. I lived that literally for years. That was my life for the work that I did. I did legislative work, I was lobbying, I was working crazy hours, different times of the day, all of that. Plus, once my family came along, raising a family in the midst of all of that and other changes that were going on. So it's not that it's a surprise to me, but I think now, having stepped away from so much of that and being much more particular about where I send that energy, that when something basically is forced upon you because of either circumstances or an emergency, that you're like, whoo, is this what I was doing all the time? I'm like, oh my God, what was I doing? And I literally have had those thoughts more than once in the last few weeks because I was like, my goodness, I was doing some things. And I'm like, yeah, I don't have to do things like that anymore. I choose not to. Um, and that means making choices in life. And so, even in the midst of that, of recognizing when you have to stop, recognize the energy that you have, the capacity you have to deal with certain things, and to just like take deep breaths in the moment and let everything else fall aside. Some things just aren't as important, right? When you're dealing with a medical crisis or some other kind of crisis, whatever, doesn't matter. But literally, things just fall to the wayside automatically, or at least they should, if you want to be present to be able to deal with that and to manage your own energy appropriately. And on the flip side of that, surprisingly enough, it still applies even in a celebratory moment, right? Because there we were going from one extreme to the other, and now getting on a plane to go celebrate this graduation, you know, uh, thousands of miles away, and being like, oh my gosh, and being dumped into a whole bunch of things, right? Scheduled places to be and figuring out what we're doing next. We were traveling with a small group. And so there was still that. And even in the midst of that, needing to recognize when you're like, okay, like woosah, woosah, I love that. And take deep breaths. And it all came to a head pretty quickly, I will say, only because of this special ceremony that I will talk about in more detail later. Um, the Kenti ceremony that this university put on, they have a bunch of specialty ceremonies, which was just so powerful in and of itself because, hello, we live in the South, we live in Texas, where they have done everything to destroy, to every effort to destroy any sign of cultural differences and celebration moments at the higher education level. I will not get on my soapbox with that right now, but there will be a soapbox moment because this ceremony was so powerful that this 2 hours on that Friday afternoon like are forever engraved in my brain, and I'm really trying to go look and find a link to it so that I can experience it again or be reminded, because there was so much depth to it, that 2 hours became a moment all its own, and all of the rest of the things around it like just fell off. All the stress and uncertainty from the a couple of weeks before with the medical emergency, all of the stress that comes from travel, because there is stress associated with travel. It's a different kind of stress, but there is a stress that comes with travel uh, and traveling in groups and all of that. All of that just fell away during this 2 hour time span as we watched, not just watched, but what became a part of the moment as this faculty and staff created this cultural safety zone for these students, for these Black students on this campus as they graduated, to celebrate them and who they are, and to do it with their family and friends and loved ones in this beautiful location. And it was just so powerful. And just settling into that, like it was almost like it was so overwhelming, like there was almost no choice. Like there was almost no choice. Like you would have had to physically wrestle with not being enveloped in the moment because it was so powerful and it was so fluid. Like there weren't breaks in the moment, right? So when I say that this 2 hour time span, it was like the 2 hours. It was like, oh, there was this great little moment and then you move on. Because, you kind of expect that with ceremonies and different things. Like, oh, that's great. Now it's like, let me sit for this boring speech, whatever. None of that. There were multiple people who spoke. There were multiple people who shared. Everything was connected to the purpose. Everything was connected to lifting up these students as they pursue this next chapter of their life, and bringing the family in, even actively with sharing words and saying, hey, repeat after us as we lift up these students and send them out into the world um, with these big dreams and goals and desires, and being connected with hundreds of people that we did not know. our point in, our point in common, our common point is literally attending this event at this particular time in this moment and letting it be and experiencing it. It was so powerful. My words do not accurately describe the moment. But what I do recall and remember afterwards, besides just keep saying it and sharing it and having my family and friends that were there saying the same thing, listening to other folks, and being revived in all of that, and recognizing, having that reminder that we don't have to be overwhelmed with the negative moments. We can, however, allow ourselves to be infused and overwhelmed in the um, powerful, purposeful, dare I say, positive moments of life, and let them feed who we are, not just for that moment, but moving forward. And there's power in that. And it's also a matter of being able to rest in that. Like literally not feeling like my guard was up because there's all this stuff going on. It was like, no, literally being able to just sit down and enjoy everything that was going on around me, watching the students, listening to the music that was being played, even the intro music before they started the ceremony. So it was like, what is it they say? There's a vibe. There was absolutely a vibe being set. There was a atmosphere being set from the moment you entered this space. And what's funny is this was a public space. Like this was an open air ceremony in the middle of a campus, and it felt as private and as closed off. It's like I said, just so powerful. And when was the last time we allow ourselves, that you have allowed yourself to really lean into that and to feel that? I know I've had some of those moments, not at this level or this depth or for this extended time, such a long time. I've had those moments, however, with, let's say, the reading or the completion of a book. If you go back when I read Isabel Wilkerson's Cast uh, earlier in the year, a few months back, and I think I shared some of my thoughts about that. I'm like, wow, like how powerful reading and being engulfed in that did that for me. Perhaps other times when I've just like come across something that I read or music that I heard. A lot of times, being out in nature where it just kind of we just kind of sit. And like I said, that word rest, which is about not being caught up in things to do and productivity and activity, but literally sitting there, has nothing to do with sleep, but in allowing your body to like deliberately idle down deliberately so that you can be present, and as a result of that be more, uh, what's the word, I'm losing my words, but where you're literally just more acutely aware of what's going on around you, the sounds, the smells, the experience. And sometimes that happens deliberately, not a lot. I mean, because most of the time we don't slow down long enough to allow ourselves to feel that. I know I've done that when I've gone on retreats, when I've set retreats for other people, when I've done some mini retreats one on one with clients. I mean, it's for them, but it's really a boost for me as well. And but having that developed, or you know, being exposed and experienced as a result of something else, like that's what makes it even more powerful, I think, in this moment. And so that said, a couple of things. Number one, in order to find rest in powerful moments, to find power in moments because of the rest that it provides, it does allow a level of, or excuse me, it does require a level of vulnerability, which means you got to let your guard down a little bit, right? Your guard, and not putting it up when it comes. You're like, oh, because sometimes people will respond to something and automatically put it back up because you're like, wait, what just happened? Like if you physically do it, but it will require letting your guard down and require some vulnerability to acknowledge that there's something going on here that may be unexpected, that I wasn't looking for, and yet I'm going to be willing to receive it, which is the second thing. Like having that level of vulnerability, and secondly, being willing to receive what comes in that moment. Ugh, you got to be willing to receive it. If you're not willing to receive it, you might as well not be there. I did just say that, right? But like being willing to receive it, because otherwise you're wasting it. And then days, months later, you're like, man, you can really be where you realize I missed out on something. And I don't want you to miss out on whatever that moment is when it shows up, when you enter the space, when you enter the time period, whatever it might be. So I want you to think about, you know, acknowledging and being willing to be vulnerable, to receive whatever's coming in that moment. And then not just that and be like, oh, that was nice and move along, but like actually sit with it. Give yourself time to kind of really sit with it, not rush it away with productivity and activity, to allow yourself to reflect back on it later, especially if it requires writing and journaling and things like that. I'm still needing to do that. It's been almost a week, and I'm still needing to do it at that level. So there are layers to this for me, because there's so much I want to be able to share and capture in different ways. But one thing I do know it has also is revive this sense of, um, a little bit of urgency, but not in a like, oh, go be productive and active, but urgency in the sense of remaining true to purpose and to delivering on that, right? And recognizing, so that for me, the moment was not wasted, so that the moment is not wasted, and to have it to help it to continue to live on, right? And because that's one of the things, we will dive straight back into productivity, activity, and let things slip away in a hot minute and miss out on the absolute joy and blessing that we could have been experiencing, are allowed to continue to be experienced from that moment of rest and power uh, that we encounter. So that's a little bit about what I experienced and my reflections on it thus far. There may be more, but I want to encourage you to kind of sit with it for yourself. What is a powerful moment where you were able to rest? Or maybe there's one where you didn't allow yourself to rest as much as you would have liked. And that's, don't beat yourself up over it. Think about, okay, with curiosity, right? Go back and think about what happened, what was going on that you didn't feel free to do that. And then what you will do next time so that you can be ready. And I think that's a fantastic way to think about it, to consider it, um, and to finish things off there. I hope this has been helpful for you. Like I said, this is a part of a process for me. This is one of those that's just really for me as I continue to like download the experience, but wanting to share it and move it forward so that hopefully someone else can be able to benefit from it as well. So, don't forget to hit the thumbs up and like and subscribe. Follow the channel as we continue on our goal of hitting our challenge and then seeing what lies ahead for us beyond that, right? Meanwhile, I offer to you to continue to celebrate you and all that you do, to do it in an empowered way that will help you to grow from this day forward. Okay. Have a fantastic day, and we will talk to you again in the next video.